Consistency is the quiet language through which real love speaks. It is not loud, dramatic, or attention-seeking. It does not rely on grand promises or emotional declarations made in moments of intensity. Instead, it reveals itself through repeated, reliable behavior over time. Love that is genuine does not need to convince, persuade, or repeatedly explain itself. It simply shows up, again and again, in ways that feel steady and grounding. Many people confuse emotional intensity with love. Intensity can feel powerful because it stimulates hope, excitement, and attachment. But intensity is often temporary. It surges during beginnings, conflicts, reconciliations, or moments of insecurity. Consistency, on the other hand, exists when nothing special is happening. It is present on ordinary days during stress, boredom, fatigue, and routine. Real love survives the absence of excitement. It remains intact when there is no performance to sustain. Promises are easy to make when emotions are high. Anyone can speak beautifully about commitment, future plans, loyalty, and devotion. Words can be rehearsed, borrowed, or spoken impulsively. Behavior cannot be faked for long. What someone does repeatedly, especially when there is no immediate reward, tells the truth. Love that is real aligns words with actions so closely that there is no gap to analyze. When behavior contradicts promises, the behavior is always more honest. Inconsistency often arrives subtly. It rarely begins as obvious neglect. It starts with small fluctuations. Attention that appears and disappears, availability that shifts without explanation, warmth that is present one week and absent the next. At first, these changes are rationalized. Stress is blamed, circumstances are defended, patience is extended. Over time, the emotional cost accumulates. The relationship begins to feel unstable, even if there are moments of closeness in between. This is how inconsistency quietly reveals emotional absence. It creates a dynamic where connection is unpredictable. Unpredictability forces the mind into vigilance. Instead of feeling secure, a person begins monitoring tone, timing, and responsiveness. They start adjusting themselves to maintain connection. They wait, they hope, they analyze. This is not love creating safety, it is attachment trying to survive uncertainty. Consistency does not mean perfection. Real love still involves mistakes, misunderstandings, and limitations. The difference lies in repair. When someone truly cares, they return, they clarify, they follow through, they take responsibility for emotional impact, not just intention. Inconsistency without accountability erodes trust. Consistency with repair strengthens it. One of the most misunderstood aspects of love is effort. People often believe effort should feel forced, negotiated, or demanded. In reality, effort flows naturally when love is present. It may not always look grand, but it is dependable. Calls are returned, messages are answered, plans are respected. Emotional presence does not vanish without explanation. When someone values you, staying connected is not a burden, it is a priority. Inconsistent behavior teaches the nervous system to brace instead of relax. Even during good moments, there is an underlying tension. How long will this last? When will it change again? This emotional instability is not romantic, it is exhausting. Love that is consistent allows the body to soften. There is no need to prepare for withdrawal or sudden distance. Stability becomes the norm, not the exception. Many people stay in inconsistent dynamics because they confuse unpredictability with passion. The emotional highs feel rewarding precisely because they contrast so sharply with the lows. This creates a cycle where relief is mistaken for love. When affection returns after absence, it feels intense, even though it is simply the removal of distress. Consistency breaks this cycle by eliminating emotional scarcity. Another quiet cost of inconsistency is self-doubt. When behavior fluctuates without explanation, people often turn inward to find the cause. They question their worth, attractiveness, communication style, or emotional needs. They assume responsibility for the inconsistency instead of recognizing it as a choice made by someone else. Love does not require self-erasure to maintain connection. Consistency also reflects emotional maturity. It requires self-regulation, empathy, and accountability. Someone who loves consistently understands that their actions affect another person's sense of safety. They do not disappear when overwhelmed. They communicate. They adjust. They respect emotional impact even when intentions were not harmful. This is not about control, it is about care. When inconsistency becomes a pattern, it is no longer situational, it is relational. Patterns reveal priorities. If someone repeatedly withdraws, avoids, or becomes unavailable during moments that require emotional presence, they are showing the limits of their capacity or willingness to love. This does not make them a villain, but it does make the reality clear. Real love does not require waiting for someone to become consistent. It arrives with consistency already built in. Hoping that love will stabilize someone who is emotionally absent places the responsibility in the wrong direction. Love enhances stability. It does not create it from nothing. Consistency also teaches trust without words. You don't have to ask where you stand. You don't have to decode silence. You don't have to wonder whether care will disappear if you express a need. Trust grows quietly when behavior remains steady over time. It becomes a felt experience, not a logical conclusion. There is a particular peace that comes from being loved consistently. It does not produce adrenaline. It produces calm. It allows personal growth because emotional energy is not spent managing uncertainty. In consistent love, attention turns outward, toward creativity, purpose, and connection, rather than inward toward survival. When people experience inconsistency for too long, they often mistake calm for boredom. This is not because calm lacks depth, but because the nervous system has become accustomed to chaos. Healing often involves relearning what safety feels like. Consistent love may initially feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, to those who have lived in emotional unpredictability. Understanding consistency as the language of real love is not about judgment, it is about education. It teaches discernment. It helps differentiate between potential and reality, between intention and impact. It clarifies that love is not something to be proven through endurance. It is something that reveals itself through reliability. In the end, consistency answers the questions that words cannot. It shows whether care is conditional or steady. It reveals whether connection is a convenience or a commitment. It demonstrates whether love is present, not just when it is easy, but when it is ordinary, inconvenient, and unremarkable. When you begin to value consistency, you stop negotiating for basic presence. You stop excusing patterns that hurt you. You stop mistaking emotional absence for mystery. Instead, you learn to trust what is shown repeatedly. And in that clarity, love becomes less confusing and more honest, exactly as real love is meant to be. Effort is one of the clearest indicators of what truly matters to a person. It does not require interpretation, decoding, or emotional guesswork. It shows itself in choices made daily, in time given freely, and in attention offered without being requested. When love is real, effort is not calculated or conditional. It flows naturally because care creates movement. Where effort is minimal, attachment is often superficial, regardless of how passionate the words may sound. Many people are taught to believe that love must be proven through patience, endurance, or emotional tolerance. They are encouraged to understand, to give space, and to not expect too much. While patience has value, it becomes harmful when it excuses neglect. Love does not require constant negotiation for basic consideration. When someone truly values a connection, effort is not something they need to be convinced to give. It is something they offer instinctively. Effort is not about grand gestures or dramatic sacrifices. It lives in the ordinary moments. It is found in returning a call, remembering details, showing up on time, and following through on commitments. These actions may appear small, but their consistency carries weight. They communicate, "You matter enough for me to show up." When these behaviors are absent or sporadic, the message received is not confusion, it is clarity. Minimal effort often hides behind reasonable explanations. Busyness, stress, fatigue, and distraction are offered as justifications. Life does become demanding, and no one is available at all times. The distinction lies in pattern, not exception. People make time for what they prioritize. They may not always have availability, but they communicate, they reschedule, they remain engaged. Lack of effort without accountability reveals not circumstance, but choice. When effort is one-sided, imbalance becomes the emotional climate of the relationship. One person initiates, maintains, and repairs, while the other responds passively or inconsistently. Over time, this dynamic erodes self-worth. The person carrying the effort begins to feel like they must earn attention or prove their value. Love does not place someone in a position of perpetual audition. Mutual effort creates mutual dignity. There is a difference between capacity and willingness. Some people lack emotional skills or awareness, but effort still shows intention. They may try imperfectly, but they try. Superficial attachment, however, avoids effort because depth requires responsibility. Investing emotionally means being accountable for impact, presence, and consistency. When someone avoids effort, they are often avoiding responsibility, not lacking feeling. Effort also reveals emotional availability. Love that is available leans in rather than withdraws. It seeks understanding rather than distance. It invests time because time is the most honest currency we have. Anyone can say they care, but time given cannot be reclaimed. When someone repeatedly withholds time, they are communicating the limits of their investment. One of the most damaging myths in relationships is that asking for effort makes love less genuine. In reality, needing to ask repeatedly for basic care is already a sign of imbalance. Healthy love does not require constant reminders to be attentive, respectful, or present. Requests should refine connection, not manufacture it. Minimal effort often creates confusion because it is occasionally punctuated by intense moments of attention. These bursts can feel validating and hopeful, making the absence that follows even more painful. This cycle trains people to tolerate less, waiting for crumbs of engagement. Love does not ration care. It does not appear only when it risks being lost. Effort also shows itself in emotional labor. Listening without defensiveness, apologizing without justification, and adjusting behavior after harm are all forms of effort. Love that is real does not resist accountability. It understands that maintaining connection requires humility and growth. Avoiding emotional labor is another way superficial attachment preserves comfort at the expense of intimacy. When effort is lacking, people often blame themselves. They assume they are asking for too much or being unreasonable. This internalization shifts attention away from the real issue. Wanting time, care, and consistency is not excessive. It is foundational. Love that cannot meet these needs is not love struggling, it is love absent. Effort also protects emotional safety. When someone consistently invests, the nervous system relaxes. There is no need to chase, monitor, or overextend. Safety allows authenticity to emerge. Without effort, relationships remain shallow, because vulnerability cannot exist where investment is uncertain. There is also an important distinction between being chosen and being tolerated. Tolerance requires minimal effort. Choice inspires it. When someone chooses you, they act accordingly. They adjust schedules, communicate openly, and show curiosity about your inner world. These are not obligations. They are expressions of care. Understanding that effort reveals priority changes how relationships are evaluated. Instead of focusing on potential, intention, or explanation, attention shifts to behavior. This shift brings clarity. It removes the need to convince, wait, or hope for transformation. Love that exists shows itself without persuasion. This understanding is not meant to harden the heart, but to protect it. Recognizing minimal effort as a sign of superficial attachment prevents prolonged emotional depletion. It encourages alignment with those who invest willingly, not reluctantly. When love is real, effort does not feel like sacrifice. It feels like participation. It does not require negotiation, threats, or ultimatums. It is simply present. And in that presence, there is stability, dignity, and mutual respect. In the end, effort answers the most important question in any relationship, not whether someone cares in theory, but whether they care enough to act. Love that invests time, attention, and care consistently does not leave room for doubt. It speaks clearly, honestly, and without force, and once effort becomes the measure, love becomes easier to recognize and harder to mistake. Respect is not an advanced stage of love, nor is it something that grows only after loyalty has been proven. It is the foundation upon which love either stands or collapses. When respect is absent, no amount of affection, history, or emotional intensity can compensate for the damage it creates. Genuine love does not require endurance of disrespect, because love without respect is not love. It is attachment mixed with tolerance. Many people are conditioned to believe that enduring disrespect is part of commitment. They are told that relationships require sacrifice, patience, and resilience, often without being taught the difference between healthy compromise and self-erasure. Over time, this belief trains people to accept behavior that diminishes them, excusing it as stress, personality, or honesty. Respect, however, is not situational. It is not suspended during conflict, frustration, or disagreement. It remains intact even when emotions are strained. Disrespect rarely begins in obvious forms. It often enters quietly, disguised as humor, bluntness, or familiarity. Small dismissals, sarcastic remarks, interrupted sentences, or minimized feelings slowly reshape the emotional environment. These moments may seem insignificant in isolation, but repeated over time they communicate a message: your perspective matters less. Love does not send this message, even unintentionally. One of the most damaging myths is that respect must be earned through compliance or endurance. This frames dignity as conditional, suggesting that the more one tolerates, the more valued they become. In reality, tolerance of disrespect often teaches the opposite lesson. It signals that boundaries are flexible and that harm does not carry consequence. Respect thrives where boundaries are clear and honored, not where they are repeatedly crossed. Respect is revealed most clearly during disagreement. Anyone can be kind when things are smooth. Love shows its depth when opinions differ, when emotions rise, and when frustration appears. Respectful love listens without belittling, disagrees without demeaning, and addresses issues without attacking identity. When conflict becomes a license for cruelty, respect has already been lost. Emotional safety depends on respect. Without it, people become guarded. They hesitate to speak openly, fearing ridicule, dismissal, or retaliation. Over time, silence replaces authenticity. This silence is often mistaken for peace, but it is actually self-protection. Love that requires silence to survive is not nurturing, it is suppressive. Disrespect also reveals power imbalance. When one person feels entitled to dominate conversations, decisions, or emotional narratives, respect erodes. Love is not hierarchical. It does not require one person to shrink so another can feel secure. Mutual respect allows both individuals to exist fully, without competition or control. Many people stay in disrespectful dynamics because they hope love will eventually soften behavior. They believe patience will be rewarded with change. While growth is possible, respect cannot be built on tolerance of harm. Change begins when disrespect is named and boundaries are enforced. Without consequence, disrespect becomes normalized. Respect includes how someone speaks about you in your absence. It includes how your boundaries are handled when you are not present to defend them. Love that is genuine protects dignity consistently, not selectively. It does not require surveillance or reminders to behave with care. Another overlooked aspect of respect is acknowledgement. Feeling seen, heard, and taken seriously is a form of respect. Dismissing concerns, deflecting accountability, or turning issues back onto the person who raised them erodes trust. Respectful love does not avoid responsibility. It understands that impact matters as much as intention. Disrespect often creates confusion because it may coexist with moments of affection. This inconsistency makes it harder to recognize harm. But affection without respect is unreliable. It can feel comforting one moment and damaging the next. Love that is safe does not oscillate between warmth and degradation. There is also a cultural tendency to romanticize endurance. Stories that glorify suffering for love teach people to confuse pain with depth. In reality, love deepens through understanding, not endurance of harm. Respect allows growth without injury. When respect is present, individuality is honored. Preferences, limits, and values are not treated as inconveniences. They are integrated into the relationship. Love does not require self-abandonment to maintain harmony. Understanding respect as non-negotiable changes the internal rules people live by. It shifts focus from how much can I tolerate to how am I being treated. This shift is not selfish, it is healthy. It affirms that dignity is not something to be earned through suffering. Respect also includes self-respect. Accepting disrespect often begins with internal narratives that minimize one's own needs. Reclaiming respect externally often requires redefining it internally. Love cannot be sustained when one person is in constant conflict with their own worth. Genuine love does not test limits to see how much it can take. It is careful, attentive, and considerate. It may make mistakes, but it repairs them. It does not defend harm as personality or passion. When respect is restored to its rightful place as the baseline of love, clarity follows. Confusion dissolves. The need to justify behavior fades. What remains is a simple truth. Love that honors dignity feels safe, steady, and affirming. In the end, respect is not an accessory to love, it is its evidence. Where respect is missing, love is incomplete. And where respect is present, love does not require endurance, silence, or self-sacrifice. It allows you to remain whole while being connected, which is the truest measure of love there is. Emotional safety is the quiet but unmistakable proof that care is real. It is not created through intensity, drama, or constant reassurance, but through steadiness, clarity, and consideration. Love that is healthy does not keep the nervous system on edge. It does not demand vigilance, self-monitoring, or emotional armor. Instead, it creates an internal sense of ease, the feeling that you can exist as you are without fear of punishment, withdrawal, or misunderstanding. Many people confuse emotional turbulence with passion. They interpret anxiety as attachment and uncertainty as depth. In reality, love does not rely on emotional instability to feel meaningful. When care is genuine, it brings relief rather than tension. You do not need to brace yourself before speaking or rehearse your words to avoid conflict. You are not afraid that honesty will cost you connection. Emotional safety allows truth to exist without threat. Confusion is often the first sign that emotional safety is missing. When behavior and words do not align, the mind works overtime to make sense of the gap. Questions multiply. Silence is analyzed. Tone is scrutinized. Instead of feeling grounded, you feel unsettled. Love does not require interpretation to be felt. It is clear, not cryptic. When confusion becomes a constant state, it is not because love is complex. It is because care is inconsistent. Anxiety in relationships is frequently misunderstood as personal insecurity. People are quick to blame themselves for feeling uneasy, assuming they are too sensitive or needy. But emotional anxiety often arises in response to unpredictable or dismissive behavior. The body reacts to uncertainty before the mind fully understands it. When care is stable, anxiety decreases. When care is erratic, anxiety becomes a signal, not a flaw. Self-doubt grows in environments where emotional safety is absent. When feelings are minimized, concerns dismissed, or boundaries ignored, people begin questioning their own perceptions. They wonder if they are overreacting or imagining harm. This internal erosion is not accidental. Love that is safe reinforces trust in one's own experience. It does not make someone feel foolish for having needs or emotions. One of the clearest indicators of emotional neglect is the need for constant justification, explaining feelings repeatedly, defending boundaries, proving why something matters. Love that is attentive does not require emotional arguments to acknowledge impact. It listens without forcing someone to build a case for their humanity. When justification becomes routine, care has already been compromised. Emotional safety is built through predictability. This does not mean monotony or control, but reliability. You know how someone will treat you when they are tired, stressed, or disappointed. Their values do not disappear when emotions rise. Love that is safe does not turn volatile under pressure. It remains anchored in respect and empathy. Another essential element of emotional safety is responsiveness. Being heard, acknowledged, and taken seriously creates a sense of security. This does not mean every request is met, but every concern is honored. Emotional neglect often looks like deflection, silence, or dismissal. Over time, this teaches people to suppress their needs to maintain connection. Love does not require silence to survive. Emotional safety also allows vulnerability without punishment. When care is real, sharing fears or doubts does not lead to ridicule, withdrawal, or retaliation. Instead, it invites closeness. Unsafe dynamics, however, treat vulnerability as leverage. Information shared in trust is later used to invalidate or control. This breaks trust at its core. There is a subtle exhaustion that comes from emotionally unsafe environments. It is the fatigue of constantly scanning for cues, adjusting behavior, and managing reactions. Love that is safe conserves energy. It allows emotional rest. Without this rest, even affection becomes draining. People often stay in emotionally unsafe relationships because the highs feel intense. Relief after conflict is mistaken for connection. But relief is not love. It is the temporary absence of distress. Emotional safety does not depend on cycles of harm and repair. It is steady, not episodic. Another misconception is that emotional safety eliminates conflict. It does not. Disagreements still occur, but they are navigated without fear. You are not afraid that conflict will lead to abandonment or emotional punishment. This freedom allows honesty without escalation. Emotional safety also protects identity. You do not have to shrink, perform, or pretend to be less than you are to maintain closeness. Love that is safe invites authenticity. It does not demand emotional contortion. When emotional neglect persists, people often internalize blame. They try harder, give more, and expect less. This self-abandonment is often praised as loyalty. In reality, it is a response to unmet emotional needs. Love does not ask for self-erasure. Understanding emotional safety as proof of care reframes how relationships are evaluated. Instead of focusing on intensity, attention shifts to how the relationship feels in the body. Calm becomes a sign of connection, not boredom. Peace becomes evidence of love, not absence of passion. Emotional safety is also cumulative. It builds through repeated experiences of being met with care. It cannot be created through occasional gestures or apologies. Consistency is what teaches the nervous system to trust. When emotional safety is present, self-trust grows. You feel confident in your perceptions and secure in your boundaries. You are not constantly questioning your worth or value. Love that is safe affirms rather than destabilizes. In the end, emotional safety is not optional, it is essential. Love that creates anxiety, confusion, and self-doubt is not passionate, it is neglectful. Care that is real does not keep you guessing. It allows you to rest, speak, and exist without fear. When love is genuine, it feels like clarity. It feels like steadiness. It feels like being held without restraint. And that feeling, the absence of fear, the presence of calm, is the truest proof that care is real.